My fellow Americans,
You might be wondering, why in the world is there a 30-minute countdown before the show starts? Well, we actually start live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, so this whole 30-minute countdown is a chance for YouTube and Rumble to send out their alerts and notifications, so we encourage you to gather up and hang out with everyone in the chat room. So every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time is when we do this show live. You can join us for the countdown if you like, or just set your clock and reminder that at 4 p.m. Eastern is when we go live. You can also make sure you subscribe and turn on that bell notification, so hopefully you will get a notification.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to...
Who are shouting? Just a moment.
I'm not defending him in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planning information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plant in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding this information? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
Colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organization should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
We become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. You can't agree to that. How are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Hey everyone, just as a reminder, our show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just a few minutes from now, but I should remind you that we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natalie and I work very hard on it every morning over a cup of coffee, putting the stories together that we think are important that the mainstream media is going to ignore. All you need to do is go to our website. It's just redacted.inc. Put in your email address. We won't ever sell your email to anybody. And then you'll receive a welcome email. And all you need to do is verify that email, and 7 a.m. Eastern Time is when we send out our daily newsletter. And it's about 5 or 10 minutes in length that you can read it over your cup of coffee. And like I said, we cover 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus a couple of things you might have missed while you were sleeping. We try to have some fun with it, add a little humor into it. And again, it's a great way to start off your morning. But it's also a great way for us to stay connected with you as well, because we've been banned and blocked on some of these platforms before, where we haven't been allowed to post anything, not even a community post. So the only way for us to stay connected with you is through our newsletter. We were able to send out a newsletter and say, hey everyone, we're blocked for the next week, and let you know what was actually going on with our show. Anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up for the free newsletter, and it'll be posted first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee.
know this this is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth, and that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was
already
still in
done.
Parliament, I...
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean to the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the majors. The majors' assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone. Or to take the nation to war partway. Or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip. Because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector. You didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me, and he said, sir, you got to come in and talk to me a sec. He says, we've made the decision we're going to war with Iraq. I said, we're going to war with Iraq? Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Hey everyone, Clayton here. The show is going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I should remind you that we have a VIP community. It's our Redacted Rebel VIP community. Now, this show is totally free, what you're watching right now, right? You can subscribe here on YouTube and Rumble, totally free. But if you'd like to support independent journalism, we are run by you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We wouldn't be able to hire the team that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the servers that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the reporters that we have, the team that we have. So you can support us by going to redacted.inc, and on the right side of your screen, you'll see a VIP community button. Just click that, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us. We put out exclusive content, early interviews that no one else will see, live streams just for our VIP Rebel community. So again, it's totally free to watch this show. But if you do want to support independent journalism, we would really appreciate it. Come on over to redacted.inc, click on that community button, and decide if you want to sign up or not. It's totally up to you. We thank you. And meanwhile, the show will start in just a few moments at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Hey everybody, welcome into Redacted on this Monday. It is a wacky, it is a wild and wacky Monday around here. I hope everyone is doing well. I am running the show solo tonight, doing the show solo, hosting the show solo. David and Philip are here. Grim is in the background. Natalie is off tonight. Our son has pneumonia, and so she's tending to our young boy. So this crazy pneumonia that's been going around. So anyway, we've got a very busy show for you, though, on this Monday. We are going to be looking at the latest in Ukraine. Zelensky is heading to Washington, D.C. to meet with President Biden. He'll meet with the new Speaker of the House to ask for more money. But there are rumblings. He dropped a bomb that apparently peace talks are in his midst. And, you know, he's very interested in peace talks suddenly. That they're apparently going to happen alongside the Davos World Economic Forum in Switzerland. Really? Okay, so why is he in Washington? There's a lot of moving pieces right now on this. Will Russia even come to the table for peace talks, or are they done with any kind of peace talks and they will just want unconditional surrender? We're going to look at that. Alex Jones returns to X, formerly Twitter, and the internet explodes. There's meltdowns left and right over on the liberal media side. What does this mean about censorship, the future of free speech on these platforms? We're going to talk about that tonight. Also, TikTok, really loves to push the idea that you shouldn't be having children. If you go down those algorithms, really anti-family, anti-having children, and they really want you to kind of grow old and be childless. We're going to look at the growing trend around childless on TikTok. And by the way, Elon Musk last night on a Twitter space when he welcomed Alex Jones back, specifically talked about this, talked about how with AI and with all of these different social media algorithms really pushing sort of an anti-family, anti-child future. And so we're going to talk about that in deep tonight. We're also going to look at the child slavery problem, child trafficking in the United States. We're going to hear from an HHS whistleblower who sounded the alarm on this, told the Biden administration what was happening with child trafficking that was happening in her office. She was witnessing it. She had to uncover it. She got a hand slap for even uncovering it and talking about it. She's going to join us a little bit later on the show. All of that and more as Redacted starts right now. What a crazy, crazy Monday. Hope everyone's doing well out there. I mean, look what we got. We got some crazy news stories on this Monday. We've got a massive cyber attack on America that's unfolding right now as we speak. Many of you have probably been experiencing this. The electric grid, water treatment plants, communication systems, banking. Many of you might have noticed your banks are inaccessible. How many of you have tried to access your banks this afternoon? Chemical plants, oil refineries being reported, hospitals, Rumble. I believe Rumble is still down, right? Rumble was under one of these attacks as well. Is that still down, guys?
Yep. Yeah, Rumble's still seems to be down. I can't connect to it. I haven't been able to set up a show.
Yeah, I don't think anyone
as well.
Locals is down as well.
Yep.
Wow, it's crazy. Have you guys noticed it with your banks or any sort of infrastructure that you guys have seen?
I haven't seen it with my bank yet. No, I just logged in when you said that to see, and I can still access everything at this time.
What about you, Philip?
I haven't noticed anything really from my bank or otherwise, other than Rumble.
So this is apparently one of the largest cyber attacks in America. Reports are that it's coming from China, but of course we know on this show to be skeptical about that. They just tell us that it's China. Okay, is it? All right, well then prove it. But as we know, covering false flags on this show, that you can basically imprint digital footprints to make it look like anything. So all we know is massive infrastructure is under attack right now. Let us know. In fact, Lisa Marie in our chat says, "Yep, Postal Service is down. Rumble is up now." Someone says Rumble is back up. But yeah, so many things are being affected as we speak right now. Another big story: a man was just arrested for trying to assassinate Vivek Ramaswamy, presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. It's a world on fire. Tucker Carlson launching a brand new streaming service, giving the middle finger to the mainstream media. We're heading in for a crazy 2024, folks. Crazy 2024. By the way, did you hear also, we're going to get to other stories tonight. I just want to give you some of these headlines. This new film, Leave the World Behind. Have you guys been hearing about this? This is going viral as we speak. This film was executive produced.
The Obama film?
The Obama film, yes, exactly, by Barack Obama and his husband, Michelle Obama. This film, in a nutshell, was about, it's about a cyber attack by hackers on America. What amazing timing. Amazing timing that the Obamas launch a Netflix movie about hackers on attacking America. Why the hell would a former presidential candidate or former president be, executive producers on a movie like this? By the way, there's like anti-white messages in it as well. It's really, really crazy. Really, really crazy. I've heard it's actually good. Have you guys heard it's actually good? Grim is saying that's actually good. It's actually good.
I haven't even heard of it.
I actually plan to watch it this evening. I didn't watch it this weekend. I had other things going on, but I plan to watch it because I just like to see, like, even though it's getting, all this, attention, I like to watch those things to see exactly what's being said and pushed and all that. So,
yeah, I mean, to understand it, right, as part of like the national zeitgeist, like I don't know. It's very fascinating, though, that we're under this massive cyber attack and this Obama executive produced cyber attack film just comes out on Netflix. It's all very strange, but we got a lot of news to get to tonight. We're going to be looking deeply at what are these U.S. bioweapons and what happened to the U.S. bioweapons labs in Ukraine. Where are they? And how did billions of dollars flow into Ukraine? Well, the CDC now is pointing out that there's some major problems with Ukrainians. Published on their website on Friday, the Center for Disease Control. Antimicrobial resistance in Ukraine. Russia has been reporting that Ukrainians have been being tested upon, soldiers being tested upon because of these biolabs that are in Ukraine, U.S. funded, illegal, that are there. Victoria Nuland admitted it. So we'll get to that in a minute. But first, we got a newsletter. I hope you're all subscribed to our free newsletter. You should be able to do that because you need to be able to stay connected with us. God knows these social media platforms that go down and are censored on a regular basis. At least with our newsletter, it's our way to stay connected with you with our own servers, for crying out loud. All you need to do is go to redacted.inc and just sign up. It's totally free. And we send it out at about 7 a.m. Eastern time, so you can read it over your cup of coffee. And it's like 5 or 6 stories that we cover, and a couple of the things you might have missed overnight. But some of the big stories of the day, covering them the way the mainstream media will not cover them. So we hope you get a chance to check that out. Just go to redacted.inc. That's the place to go to sign up. You have to verify it when it comes into your inbox. Just click the verify button, and you'll make sure you get it tomorrow morning on Tuesday morning. So again, redacted.inc. Is Ukraine set to surrender? Getting rumblings this morning from press reports that Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, on a trip to South America, has floated the idea of peace talks in Switzerland. All of this comes as he's heading to Washington, D.C. What will those meetings portend? More money or actual legitimate surrender and peace talks? Here to navigate these stories that have just unfolded over the past few hours is former U.S. Marine, former UN Weapons Inspector Scott Ritter, who's watching all of this closely. Scott, good to see you.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
So what do you make of this? It seems kind of like a bombshell report. Zelensky sort of drops this as an aside that, in Davos, Switzerland, alongside the World Economic Forum meetings, there's going to be some peace talks. They're going to come to the table and have some peace talks. You've been saying all along there's not going to be any sort of peace talks. It would be an unconditional surrender, if anything. Is he setting the table here for something?
No, this is just part of Zelensky's delusion and decline. First of all, the peace talks he's talking about are premised on his 10-point peace formula that he's put forward that says there can't be peace until Russia withdraws from all territories. In effect, Russia surrenders, turns its leadership over to the International Criminal Court, pays reparations. So it's fantasy, pure, unadulterated fantasy. What he's doing is linking the prospects of these peace talks with the provision of more military aid. For instance, I think this story broke based upon his discussion with the Swiss parliament and leadership via a video call. At the same time, he said, I need Switzerland to permit the re-exportation of Swiss military equipment to the Ukrainian army, you see, because we can only have peace through a Ukrainian victory. So you must continue supply. So this is Zelensky in a desperate bid to get the international community to continue funding his losing conflict with Russia. The peace he's talking about, of course, isn't peace. It's premised on more war, because in order to achieve what Zelensky claims must be achieved before peace can break out, Ukraine must strategically defeat Russia. It isn't happening. So now we come to the second part of your question. What do you do with a leader who's so delusional? Because clearly, even if the United States were able to break the gridlock in Washington, D.C. now about Ukrainian funding, there's not enough money in the world to reverse what's happening on the battlefield in Ukraine. Ukraine has strategically been defeated. Their military has admitted we've gone over to the defensive. There's no longer a talk about a counteroffensive. Even Ukraine's closest allies are saying, we don't see Ukraine being able to resume the counteroffensive until 2025, which means at best, 2024 will be Ukraine on its back feet, defending against a Russian military that is victorious everywhere, is making strident gains, and to be honest, is on the verge of destroying the cohesiveness of the Ukrainian military, meaning that there won't be a front line to defend much longer. This Zelensky is so far removed from reality that he has actually become a danger to the international community, which is why you're seeing increasingly discussions about replacing Zelensky. And I think that's the real story, is that Zelensky is history. He's gone, he's finished. We're just marking the time until that has been accomplished.
It's so bizarre because he's going to be in Washington. He's meeting with President Biden. He's also going to be meeting with the new House Speaker, the new Republican House Speaker, who, by the way, seems all in. We thought we were going to get a House Speaker who was going to put his foot down on Ukraine funding. And no, it seems like we're going back to the same well again on the House Republican side. But this new Sputnik report this morning saying that the West is mulling toppling Zelensky and has a list of successors, according to the Russian Foreign Intelligence, a list of successors, hand-picked successors. So Zelensky's going to be in Washington while movements are being made behind the scenes to remove him. I mean, what do you think this meeting in Washington is all about? Him asking for more money? Or it's sort of like a resignation meeting?
Well, I don't believe it's a resignation meeting. Joe Biden has gone all in on the notion that the United States cannot back away from its support of Ukraine, even to the extent where he, his Secretary of State, and his Secretary of Defense have all articulated that if the U.S. Congress doesn't fund Ukraine and Ukraine loses this war, as it appears to be doing, that this will lead to a scenario where American troops are fighting Russian troops in Europe, that the best way to avoid that is to continue funding the Ukrainian conflict, sort of the old, a new spin on the old adage that we used during the global war on terror. We have to fight them over there to keep us from fighting them here at home. It's moronic. It's stupid. It doesn't, it doesn't lend itself to any aspect of reality, but that's the slogan. And so, having gone in on that, I think Biden is going to bring Zelensky to Washington in an effort to break the impasse in, in Congress. But, and even with Johnson, this new speaker articulating in support of Ukraine, there's the big domestic political question. What about the southern border? What about the funding of the wall? Because the Republicans have dug in. They're not going to approve funding for Ukraine unless Biden approves funding for the border wall. And right now, Biden, by inviting Zelensky, it doesn't appear that Biden's seeking compromise. He's seeking to bully, to coerce, to cajole the Republicans into continuing support. But who is Zelensky? He's not the man he was last year. He certainly isn't Time Magazine's Man of the Year. He's a failed politician, a failed leader of a failed country who is suffering the consequences of a failed counteroffensive that cost the collective West hundreds of billions of dollars and cost Ukraine hundreds of thousands of lives.
Over the past week, we've seen a number of media reports. It seems like they're all on the same White House talking points about Ukraine, that Ukraine's losing, but here we really need to step up the amount of military aid that's going there, because if we don't, then Americans will have to shed blood over there. It looks like UK forces will have to shed blood over there, and Putin, left unmatched, will move and march and conquer most of Europe. He'll take over all of Ukraine, and he'll keep marching, and he'll take over all of Europe. Putin's a madman. So that's the message they're going with, and it seems that the Western media is falling right into line with this narrative.
No, it's unfortunate, but if they would just put on, their qualitative thinking hats, I know that's difficult to do when we're speaking of the Western media, because they're little more than stenographers of whatever policies coming out of Washington, D.C., NATO, or the European Union. But reality, has to at some point in time attach itself to policy. Russia right now is winning a war against Ukraine that has not been easy for Russia. It's required the total mobilization or near total mobilization of Russia's defense industry. It's required Russia to sacrifice tens of thousands of lives. And even as we speak, this victory has yet to manifest itself in Russia's reacquisition of Russian territory. That is the territory that Russia annexed last year that continues to be occupied by Ukraine. At best, Russia would be able to regain these territories and perhaps extend Russian control over additional adjacent territories. But that's the maximum extent that this Russian military can advance into Ukraine. This Russian military, as it currently exists, cannot seize all of Ukraine if there is resistance. It lacks the capacity to do so. It's not large enough to do so. So this notion that Russia is seeking to steamroller over Europe, to extend the fight into Poland, to extend the fight into the Baltics, is ludicrous, is absurd, is obscene. Russia's not doing that. Russia is simply seeking to assert the national security prerogatives that it set out in December of 2021, that Ukraine cannot be a part of NATO, and that Russia cannot tolerate this pro-Western, pro-NATO entity, this cancer living next door. But Russia wants to live in peace with Ukraine, a neutral Ukraine. That's the limit of Russia's ambition. That's it. Vladimir Putin has not articulated anything other than that. And the reality is the Russian military isn't positioned to do anything other than that. Any military expert will tell you, based upon the correlation of forces as they exist, Russia is not capable at this juncture of continuing an offensive operation against Poland or the Baltics. It is capable of defending Russia against any incursion by the newly expanded NATO, inclusive of Finland, potentially Sweden. But Russia is not positioned to carry out ongoing offensive operations. That's a military reality, but it's also backed by the political reality that there is nothing about what Russia has done that appears to be posturing in that direction. So this is fear-mongering of the most base kind by the Biden administration, by NATO. Fear-mongering that says, if we don't continue to sacrifice Ukraine on the altar of NATO relevance, woe be us, the world will come to an end. No, the world won't come to an end. Russia is not the enemy that the West is painting it to be. Russia simply wants to live in peace with its neighbors. It wasn't Russia that picked the fight in Ukraine. It was the West. It wasn't Russia that turned its back on peace. It was the West. Russia will now finish this conflict on terms that are acceptable to Russia. There will be peace in Ukraine eventually, Clayton, but it'll be a peace dictated by Russia at a table of surrender. It won't be a peace that comes from some sort of fantasy world crafted by Zelensky and his Western supporters.
And what is true, of course, is that Ukrainian soldiers are massively underarmed. There are freezing conditions, of course, and their military is being slaughtered and decimated. We know from the Ukrainian side that they're looking to up the amount of conscription, get as many people as they can. They've, of course, altered the military age, extending the age at which you can join. I think in the United States, you can't even join the military if you're over 44. There, I think it's now pushed up to 60. They're trying to expand it because an entire generation of young people has been entirely wiped out. So they're getting incredibly desperate right now. And as you look at this Sputnik report about a list of successors to Zelensky that the West would mull putting in place, would it be someone like a Zelensky or somebody who has some sort of an appetite to try to launch some sort of larger counteroffensive, even though it seems like it'd be impossible? Or is it somebody who is going to be sitting on a defensive posture? I'm just curious what your thoughts are on who the West would try to push in Zelensky's place.
Well, it's clear that the West has bought into a narrative that says that the conflict, best case scenario, will become a frozen conflict. And so they need a leader that will accept this temporary political setback of a frozen conflict, until which time Ukraine can join NATO, can join the European Union, can turn things around. And then at some point in the future, undesignated, the collective West will back Ukraine's endeavors to reconquest its lost territory. So that's the Western scenario. Now, the Russians are looking at it and saying, why would we ever even participate in something? And they're not going to. So again, the West is in this self deceiving process of pretending that they're relevant. Clayton, I don't know how to make this any more clear. When the fighting stops in Ukraine, and it will stop, it'll be done because Russia has determined it's time to stop. And Russia will determine the conditions which facilitate, determining that time. Russia alone, by itself, with no input from the West, will make these decisions because the West, Clayton, has been defeated by Russia. Why would Russia ever allow a defeated entity to negotiate and demand the terms of conflict termination? They would never allow that.
Right.
This is like, the United States, saying at the end of, the World War II, hey, Germany, how do you think this should end, pal? What do you want? You want to keep part of France?
Right.
What the hell? I mean, a little bit of Russia, some of the Balkans, Nazis. It's okay. Hitler, you want to stay, Hitler? You can stay. We just want this war over. No, unconditional surrender is unconditional surrender, and that's the only thing Ukraine's going to get out of this.
I want to get you out of here on this, Scott. Your expertise in bioweapons and weapons of mass destruction. Since the very beginning of this, I've been fascinated by the bioweapons labs in Ukraine. Victoria Nuland, of course, under oath, admitted to it, even after they first lied about there being bioweapons facilities, biolabs in Ukraine funded by the United States. We know the Hunter Biden connection to all of this. And we've long been wondering, and of course, Russia has been pointing out, saying, look, we know that there are major trouble with Russia's radiological, chemical, and biological defense troops. They've said a number of times that the U.S. military and biological activities in Ukraine, deliberate infections of Ukrainian servicemen with deadly viruses, testing on these individuals. And now we have a report from the CDC last week talking about the antimicrobial resistance seen now spiking in Ukraine. This is from the Centers for Disease Control on their own website. This is not a conspiracy theory. The CDC is now saying that they're seeing this spike. Could this be from these biolabs? I guess the question is, there's been no real reporting on what's been happening to these labs since the war has really unfolded. We've seen documents being burned and other things. But what's your assessment? In your experience, what's happened to these labs? Have they been cleaned out? And should we be concerned that there are some sort of major problems, as reports are suggesting, that these antimicrobial resistance have born right out of these labs? What's your assessment of this?
Well, first of all, these labs are sort of they're linked to a Cold War era program, the Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, run by the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, to take under control Soviet-era bioweapons labs that had been inherited by the Ukrainian government. Then these labs became an employment vehicle. This program became an employment vehicle for Ukrainian biologists who, it wasn't just about taking control and shutting down these labs, but how to keep these biologists who were involved in producing some of the world's deadliest pathogens, keep them employed so they don't go elsewhere. And then you turn it over to contractors who are seeking to come up with viable projects for these scientists to do. In the U.S. bioweapons world, we, of course, are a signatory to the Biological Toxins and Weapons Convention. It has very loose compliance, mechanisms, but we are committed to it. And there's evidence that we're serious about being committed. To give you an example, when the Soviet Union fell, we gained access to some of the blueprints and diagrams of advanced Soviet bioweapons, including cluster munitions that were used to disperse bioagents. And the CIA, when they got the documents, sought to reverse engineer these and produce them so they could better evaluate the efficacy of the weapons system. And the U.S. government, the experts, looked at what the CIA was doing and said that is a violation, a technical violation of the Biological Toxin and Weapons Convention. And so pressure was put on the CIA to terminate that program. And this was done in secrecy, meaning it wasn't public pressure. This was an internal review. So the reason why I bring that up is that we are not inclined to operate in violation of a treaty. What we do, however, is take it right up to the edge. And on biological weapons, and I know this personally because I was a hazmat technician trained to federal standards to respond to chemical, biological, and nuclear things. And I've been to all the federal training courses there are on this. When we speak of biological weapons, we speak in American terms of defensive capacity. But you can't have a defensive capacity unless you test to protect against potential offensive weapons. So part of our defensive capacity is to produce on a pilot scale, on very small scale levels, different pathogens, dry powdered anthrax, for instance. The dry powdered anthrax that was used in the October 2001 envelope attack was produced by the United States government as part of this program. And we do the same thing. There are limitations, however, to what can be done legally in the United States. So now we have these biolabs in Ukraine and in Georgia and elsewhere. And we have defense contractors who have been told there is a lot of money available to pursue these programs. And so they put in, together with industry, et cetera, these programs that are couched as defensive in nature, but are really about developing offensive capabilities. But they claim that the offensive capabilities are only done so we can learn how to protect ourselves against them, that we have to project what a potential enemy can do so we can better prepare for it. But that's just mumbo jumbo, because at the end of the day, the offensive capabilities that we're producing violate the Biological Toxin and Weapons Convention. We just fool ourselves into believing they don't because we say it's really about defensive. So ignore the fact that it's really an offensive program. It's only fake offensive to make ourselves stronger defensively. I think this is what happened. I think this was a project absolutely out of control, where money was being poured into Ukraine and people were being allowed to put up any harebrained scheme and run with it. And the Ukrainians have such lax regulatory oversight that things can happen in Ukraine that can't happen in the United States, such as infecting servicemen, working with the mentally ill, things that, again, when you look at it in isolation, you say, this is insane what they're doing, insane. But if you've ever been involved in defense contracting, where all supervision, all compliance control, all regulatory control has been lifted and you leave them to their own devices, this is what you get, Frankenstein's monster.
Who's controlling these labs now? 46 of them. I mean, who has control? Does the United States have security control of it?
I would believe, knowing the way that contracts are done, that we've shut these things down, that we've terminated the funding for these programs, and these programs have been shut down, that they are in the process of being whitewashed, eliminated, boom. And this is another thing that Congress needs to get in a hold of, because we can't just allow this to have occurred and then disappear. The Russians are sitting on a trove of documentation that proves that America was operating in violation of the Biological Toxin and Weapons Convention. The Americans will say there was no intent to do so, but as I just outlined, that's just because of a perverse American interpretation of what intent is. The bottom line is we were violating this. It's imperative that Congress, if America is ever going to be taken seriously in the world of multilateral disarmament treaties, such as the Biological Toxin Weapons Convention, the Chemical Weapons Convention, or any other nuclear nonproliferation treaties, that we have a full understanding of what happened, how it happened, why it happened, and that we put in place mechanisms to ensure that it never happens again. Because what we did in Ukraine wasn't just wrong, Clayton, it was a crime.
And yeah, we'll see if anyone's prosecuted on this. Anthony Fauci is still getting to go to Washington Nationals games, by the way. Victoria Nuland still able to be testifying privately in Congress and behind closed doors as a some sort of an expert. Scott Ritter, great to see you. Thank you so much for your expertise on this, and really, really fascinating. We appreciate it as always. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks for having me.
And have a good Christmas as well. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. We've got more news to get to here on your show. We're going to look at Alex Jones returning to the internet, returning to X, or formerly Twitter, and the internet melts down of it. Wait until you see the mainstream media response to this. And we're going to unpack it because there were quite a few things, specifically his assessments about Elon Musk, which I found fairly eye-opening. There were a couple of big moments, I think, that are really important to discuss from this, and the broader discussion about free speech and censorship. TikTok also pushing content that is promoting the idea of not having children. Yeah, you don't need children to live a happy life, and they're actively promoting this inside their algorithm. It seems to keep pace with their other content that TikTok pushes as well. We're also going to look at the child slavery problem in the United States, the child trafficking problem that's being funded in part by the Biden administration, Health and Human Services, and ferrying people via airlines, and the TSA making special accommodations for these children that are being trafficked across the border and being sold off in the United States. It's a multi-billion-dollar operation. And why is nothing being done about it? We've got an HHS whistleblower on the show who's going to join us in just a few moments. Let us know where you're joining us from. As I mentioned, I'm doing the show solo tonight from this side of the desk. My wife is watching our 13-year-old son who has pneumonia, so I'm solo tonight here. But we do have the new, by the way, up on the big screen here, Grim added the new national debt clock. This is the U.S. national debt right now. We've added this tonight, as you can see.
Wait, how much of that am I personally responsible for?
I think you're responsible. Every American is responsible now for like $250,000, I think. Oh, so yeah. So you're responsible for like $250,000, I think, right now. But look at that, $33 trillion. It's moving up nicely. Look how quickly, just how quickly that goes. Think about when you guys pay taxes. When you send in your tax payment, how quickly it's spent. Like it might be crushing for you as a family to send in your tax bill, and you're like, oh my God, the pain of writing that check, and sending that off, and then it's spent like that, and then we can send $200 billion to Ukraine like that, no problem at all. But that's your tax dollars.
I mean, with a debt like that, what's the problem with them just sending me my taxes?
Right.
They just send the money to me, because what does it matter really? Like what's $5,000 gonna do to that? Nothing. They won't even notice it.
No, do you remember that when George W. Bush, there was a little kid who saved up his allowance to help with the national debt? He gave George W. Bush a jar of allowance money, pennies and dollars and things that he had saved up. This poor little boy, he thought he's really going to make a dent in this, out of the goodness of his heart. It's no, you shouldn't be sending them the money. They need to be managing the money better, not going massively into debt. But
did George Bush say, hey, you'd be able to give me more if you had 3 jobs, kid?
Right. 3 jobs. That's America. That's uniquely American. George W. Bush didn't pick up on the irony of that when that woman was saying that to him at that town hall. Well, now, under Bidenomics, many Americans have to have 2nd and 3rd jobs right now. So times are tough. And I don't know if you saw the numbers on this. Warren Buffett selling $287 billion in stock. Berkshire Hathaway selling off $28 billion in stock. And what that means is, if you're watching Berkshire Hathaway closely, selling off all that stock in multiple quarters, as Newsweek reports this afternoon, that's a bad sign that a recession is right around the corner. And there are many signs that a recession is coming in the first quarter after Christmas, after this sort of Christmas rush and holiday temporary employment. So right now it's going to get crazy with the U.S. dollar and what's happening. And that's why our friends over at Lear Capital at least can help you get prepared for that, making sure that you've got precious metals, you've got gold, silver, that you can convert some of those U.S. dollars into gold and silver, and make sure that, if you've got $2,000 or whatever it is sitting in a savings account, that savings account is losing value every day because of the U.S. dollar and inflation. So $1 today is worth less tomorrow. That's just how it is. That's just how it is in your bank account. But at least having precious metals, silver and gold is a hedge against this inflation. That's why so many central banks right now are hoarding as much gold as they can. China is buying up as much gold as they can right now. And our friends at Lear Capital can help you get set up where you can actually buy gold coins, have them shipped right to your house so you can store them in your own safe, or you can store them off-site. They'll help you do that as well, where it's under 24-hour guarded protection off-site. You can do that. But, 2023 has been a rocky year, and early part of 2024 could even be worse right now. So our friends at Lear Capital can help you start purchasing precious metals, converting part of your IRA or your 401k into a gold and silver IRA. Call them today. Just get on the phone with them. They love to talk with us, our viewers. Tell them I sent you. Tell them you watch Redacted. They love us. They're fantastic over at Lear. They'll take great care of you. Call their 800 number right now, 1-800-613-3557. Write it down, or just go to their website, learredacted.com, to get your free investor's guide in gold and silver. And you can receive up to $15,000 in free bonus metals with a qualified purchase. So again, that 800 number, 1-800-613-3557, or go to learredacted.com. Well, let's talk about Alex Jones. 1 week after Elon Musk told advertisers to go F yourself, they then tried to blackmail him, censor voices on his platform. That's what they've been doing all along, basically trying to tell him who you can have on your platform, who you can't have on your platform, and he told them to go F themselves. Musk then reinstated Alex Jones to the platform, and legacy media went absolutely apeshit. That's right. That's legacy media. That's legacy media mom right there. And so, I mean, the response was amazing. Even on X, the platform that's, supposed to be free speech, no censorship. David Levitt writes this on X. How many innocent people will be murdered because Elon Musk allowed Alex Jones back in Twitter? And I think he's serious about that. Like that he says, racists, misogynists are going to go and attack people now because Alex Jones is back on Twitter. What world are people living in, by the way?
I mean, you should see what happens when McDonald's brings back the McRib and then pulls it away really quick. Yeah. People have died over that. It's the same thing.
People go ballistic. It's like that, liberal lady freaking out about
the McRib.
So, I mean, but I don't know if you guys saw the mainstream media response to this was crazy. The newspapers today, the Washington Post, Elon Musk restores account of conspiracy theorist Alex Jones on X. By the way, the Washington Post was pushing the Russia collusion hoax. So who's the conspiracy theorist? The Washington Post? The Washington Post went all in on Russiagate. They're the ones that were pushing a hoax, pushing a conspiracy theory, but they're the Washington Post, so they can pretend to be high and mighty, right? Okay. So then here's the Huffington Post. Elon Musk hosts unhinged panel with Alex Jones after reinstating his X account. Okay, it was an unhinged panel. I listened to the whole thing. Nothing about it was unhinged except the door or the zipper on Vivek Ramaswamy's pants, because he went to pee and forgot that his microphone was on. He was a part of the panel as well, and everyone heard it. That's about the only unhinged thing. Unhinged was actually a fairly interesting, it was a really interesting discussion about censorship, about free speech, about speech you don't like. But unhinged? Like, what part was unhinged? I love this. Salon, here's another one. Elon Musk flips the switch on Alex Jones' X account after doing one of his weird polls. Okay, it wasn't his poll. It was somebody else did the poll. And it was after his interview with Tucker Carlson. Someone else did a poll and said, should Elon bring back, Alex Jones' account? And so he didn't run the poll. Here's Rolling Stone. Elon Musk marks race to the bottom with Alex Jones, Ramaswamy, Andrew Tate on a live Twitter chat. So I listened to the whole thing. I don't know. Did you guys listen to it? I thought there were a lot of interesting moments. What stood out to you? I mean, What was one of the big takeaways?
I really like the a lot of the stuff that Andrew Tate and Alex Jones were telling Elon, and about how, like the one thing that I don't agree with is that Alex had to get voted back in the first place. I don't think he ever should have been banned in a perfect world, because I'm a free speech purist, right? But I think that conversation probably opened Elon's mind a little bit to all the people that are still banned that shouldn't be. Because like one thing Andrew Tate brought up that I thought was really good is like, if you make a mistake or you say something wrong, you shouldn't be canceled from the conversation for the rest of your life. Now, there are some people definitely that should be canceled from the conversation for the rest of their lives based on the extremity of what they've done. But I don't think something you've said should fall into that.
Right. Incitement to violence. And I thought Elon's response on all of this was, well, if someone in the future says something that's inflammatory or that upsets somebody, what will you do to them? Will you ban their account? How will you handle that? And he said, no, we're going to err on the side of the law. If the person, we're going to follow the law. If the person has broken the law, that's when we would take action. If the person has violated the law, incited violence, caused physical harm to somebody somehow through the platform, they would, that's when we would take action. But we're going to always come down on the side of the law in this.
And I feel that's the way it has to be. That's the only way you're going to actually be able to do this the right way. And then you deal with it as it comes. Then you have community notes working against people. And the thing is, like, if people have a problem with the things they're saying, they don't want to see it, you can always block them. That feature has been there since old Twitter. So if you don't like it, you can block them. If you want to create your own echo chamber, you can. But these companies should not be creating the echo chamber, which has been it's what we currently have on YouTube. It's what we have on Facebook. It's what we have on all these other platforms. Is they create the echo chamber, and we're allowed to exist in it as long as we don't echo the things that they don't want.
Al Gore this weekend, I don't know if you heard him. He was went off about social media and how it's destroying people's brains, and we need to control it. And his argument was that if it's not mainstream, then we can't trust it. So if it's not CNN, if it's not the Washington Post, if it's not the New York Times, if it's alternative media, then we can't trust it, and it's actually falls under the label of misinformation. That's how Al Gore sees it. So alternative media outside of the mainstream is misinformation. I thought one of the other interesting aspects of this is the advertising piece, and all of these advertisers that have been, strong-armed to be pushed away. And we already had Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is filing a lawsuit against Media Matters for fraud. And now you have, just a few minutes ago, you have the Missouri Attorney General also filing a lawsuit. And this is Attorney General Andrew Bailey. We have reason to believe that Media Matters used fraud to solicit donations from Missourians in order to bully advertisers into pulling out of X, which was formerly Twitter, the last platform dedicated to free speech in America. We have launched an investigation. So now that's two different attorneys general that are launching investigations against Media Matters for bullying advertisers for leaving the platform. So maybe we're turning a corner now. Perhaps maybe we're starting to see some light here and turning a corner.
Well, if you just watch certain narratives that you follow, like Israel or whatever, it is on that platform a lot harder for them to spread the propaganda that was so easy for them when old Twitter was around, because they could squash anything that went against any propaganda that they put out, like the Hunter Biden laptop story, for instance.
Right.
They're not able to do that now. There are so many things that you can see there that contradict the propaganda now, and I think that is ultimately they are going to lose control of propaganda if this platform is allowed to stay in the way it's going.
Well, you gave me a perfect segue, because there was a moment last night in this Twitter space. Now, to just be clear how this was, it was like a 2-hour-long Twitter space where they welcomed Alex Jones back, and he was on there. And there was a bunch of people on there. You had Mike Flynn popped up there, Andrew Tate. There was a bunch of people that popped in there, and Vivek Ramaswamy, et cetera. And then it was interesting because Alex, and then Elon jumps in, and Alex sort of starts interviewing Elon, and they have this sort of back and forth. And he admits, Alex Jones basically says that he believes that he's going to be targeted, that, he's going to be, that Alex Jones said that he believes Elon Musk has a target on his back, and they're coming for him. that he's going to be through violence. In fact, he said, watch out for like radioactive isotopes in your food. And he even said something that I found fascinating. I didn't know this. Alex Jones said that he has it on good authority that early in the Trump administration, they thought that someone was messing with President Trump's food in order to poison him. And I thought that was holy smokes. Okay. And that President Trump himself was actively worried about it. Now, whether or not it was happening, we don't know. But according to this, that he was actively concerned about it and would sort of watch his food being prepared after that as a result of that. But he was warning
that's why
Elon
he only
Musk.
ate McDonald's and stuff, like fast food. He's like, if I just go fast food, I don't have to worry.
Right, I'll just go through.
Well, that was the rumor I had heard. I mean, it was obviously like unsubstantiated, but like years and years ago, heard that the reason he only eats cheeseburgers, like McDonald's cheeseburgers, is because of that very reason, that he was paranoid about being poisoned.
Well, and maybe even extended into the White House. I'm not exactly sure about that, but he was specific about Elon Musk, like with a target on his back, that they're, again, as the only free speech platform, and he's exposing these people. Now, you can agree with things Elon says. You disagree with him. I don't agree with everything he says, but it's a platform. I don't care what, he's the guy that's like behind it. I don't really care. I'm caring what's the conversation is on this platform right now. And I think you're right. You're seeing things you wouldn't otherwise get to see, but I thought it was interesting. He thinks he has a target on his back. Andrew Tate also said the same thing. He thinks Elon Musk there's going to be very dangerous times ahead for him, and that he's going to be basically using the law to go after him. That they're going to basically use the law over and over and over again to come after him, and it will just wear you down, just after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, and in the same way that they've come after him. So, and I
guess the one fortunate thing about that is he happens to be one of the richest men in the world, if not I'm not sure at this point. So he actually has the money to fight it. Whereas like some of these other platforms, they have to cave because they don't have that kind of money and time to fight this.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, but Jones says, look, if they gun down Elon Musk, that only makes him bigger. And I'm quoting him now. They don't want to turn us into martyrs. They either poison you or they come to you in a murder-suicide. He told Elon this. They'll kill your wife or they'll kill you. It's a deep state tactic. So they don't want to martyr you, but they'll just do something as simple as like a poison or murder-suicide. I mean, he told him this. It's crazy. And they all went on record last night saying, I'm not a person to ever, commit suicide. That's not who I am. That's not something I'd ever do. And they all said that. It's kind of crazy. Jones also said that, that there are. He said that they are hatching assassination plots to take out President Trump. Now he confirmed last night. Alex Jones confirmed something that I've said on this show for months. They will not let Trump become president. I just don't see how they will. I don't see how the deep state allows Trump to become president. And Jones said it last night. He said they're actively hatching plots to take out the former president and Elon Musk, just like they did with John F. Kennedy.
Well, and I agree. And the thing is, I'm hoping that opens more people's eyes, even on both sides, how corrupt our electorate is. Because like that, it's going to take something like that. Like if he's polling and everything in the top and everything, and you see nothing come out of this lawsuit or whatever, and then all of a sudden he still can't. Like I'm just really hopeful that opens people's eyes to what's really going on here, and then be like, okay, I guess there is something wrong. We need to fix it.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not saying, Alex Jones is any kind of hero or anything like that. I'm simply having a conversation about this event last night, him being brought back to this platform and what this means more broadly for free speech. The very first question that Elon asked Alex Jones last night was about Sandy Hook. And he said, quote, obviously it would be heartless and cruel to deny a school shooting. And then Alex Jones went into his long explanation about it and tried to explain that he was echoing the sentiments of someone else, someone else's thoughts on it, and that he never promoted that idea and all of that. But there's, it's very difficult to go back and try to find video of him actually promoting it. But, anyway, don't want to get off on that piece. But that was the very first thing that he asked him. about. Then Jack Posobiec asked Elon what he would do if the FBI came to his house or came to Elon's house and asked him to censor things on the platform. And here's what Elon had to say about that. Listen.
Though the FBI, the DHS, et cetera, if they reach out to X, I believe they called it defensive briefings in 2020 regarding, which eventually culminated in the censorship of Hunter Biden. If they started reaching out again, would that be something that you or the team, and no, I can understand if you don't want to answer now, but you would consider making public?
We will be as transparent as possible with that, yeah, and frankly, if I think a government agency is breaking the law in their demands on the platform, I would be prepared to go to prison personally if I think they are the ones breaking the law.
Jones also said, or Musk said, that he was not afraid to die after reinstating Alex Jones. That if the deep state has plans to assassinate me, then I'm not afraid to die. He said a lot of people are afraid to die. I am not, he said. So crazy. But yeah, I thought there was a couple of interesting takeaways. I think the idea that they're trying to target Musk, that Andrew Tate said that they're going to use lawfare instead of warfare, lawfare, to use the legal system to try to come after Musk, slow him down methodically, ripping him apart piece by piece legally, and all of that.
Well, and I think if they're successful with Trump, we're going to see a lot more of that, because if they're like, oh, we can do this, then they're going to start doing it to more people.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say it here again. What do you guys think? What do you think, David? I mean, what do you think, Philip? I don't think there's any way that the deep state allows Trump to become president. I just cannot see it.
Oh, no. No. I mean, those are two, the RNC and DNC are private parties. The RNC does not support Trump at this point. Right. So he's not going to get the nomination.
No,
I don't see, I honestly do not see how he could get the nomination with that party at this point.
No, Nikki Haley will get the nomination probably. She's
Yeah.
getting all the money, the deep state money. Yeah.
If he stood any chance at all, he would have to go independent somehow and still be able to be on the ballot. There's going to be so much fight to keep him off the ballots in so many states. Like, they're already doing it. They're already fighting to keep him off the ballot. So I don't see how he could do it at this point.
Yeah, I think I don't see how it's going to happen. You notice all the news articles about Nikki Haley. It's all coming out of the deep state. It's all coming out of the military-industrial complex. The neocons and the military-industrial complex loves her because she's all in on war. She's carrying the water for them right now. She's calling for censorship. She's calling for registration, bioregistration. She wants all of that. So she's like a neocon's wet dream right now. And so that's why you're seeing all these articles popping up. Oh, Nikki Haley's looking more favorable in the polls. She's beating Biden, and so you're going to see a lot more Nikki Haley stuff.
And that's exactly why they're going to attack Vivek so hard, because he is pulling her into the light, and they're trying to keep her in the shadows. And the more he pulls her into the light, the more pissed off they're going to be, and the more we're going to see against him.
Yep, neocon Nikki Haley. We'll see, and they'll take him out. So again, as I mentioned off the top of the show, a guy was arrested today for trying to assassinate Vivek Ramaswamy. They took him in custody this afternoon. So crazy times out there, guys. We've got more news to get to here. We're going to talk about TikTok pushing this childless content. Like they don't want young people to have kids. They really don't. This is all part of this sort of Malthusian eugenics. We don't want you to have kids. We want you to take trans medication, go through transitioning. We don't want you to have children. And we're going to show you that. And Elon Musk talked about it last night, about the need to have children. And they don't like that. The mainstream media does not like that. The Associated Press, CNN, they're not fans of having children. So we'll talk about that. We're also going to look at this child slavery in the United States and the child trafficking. We're going to hear from an HHS whistleblower who's going to join us to tell that story. She sounded the alarm on this to the Biden administration. What did they do? The answer may surprise you. But first, with all of we've seen this massive cyber attack tonight, right? Your data being leaked, data brokers getting access to anything they want, selling off your data, your banking information, all of it. And It's unbelievable.
Just wanted to say really quick, I got a letter from my insurance company this week saying that my information was possibly leaked through my insurance company. And so to go update my information and everything.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. And so now you can be able to find it because our sponsor Aura will actually track it down for you and handles all of it. Aura will actually find out who these data brokers are that are making a fortune off of selling your private information to robocallers, spammers, and others who want to learn about you. Aura can identify data brokers exposing your info and submit opt-out requests on your behalf, and they're legally required to remove you. If they don't, they will face federal prosecution. Let Aura handle it for you. They're fantastic at it. They do so much to protect you and your family from online threats that you can't see. It's that easy to set up. All you have to do, even if you don't have to download several different apps to get things like parental controls, antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft, insurance, and all of that. You get everything in one affordable price. That's right. Aura.com/redacted is how you can make sure that people aren't exploiting your private information and making money off of it. And you get a 2-week free trial. And it's amazing how much they can find just in those 2 weeks. So stop data brokers from exposing your information. Go visit aura.com/redacted right now. And just for a 14-day free trial, you can see if your personal information has been compromised. We'll have links in the description below, so you can check that out. Again, aura.com/redacted. Our thanks to them for sponsoring the show. Well, last night in that Twitter space, Elon Musk said that Americans should have more children. And wow, the internet kind of went wild on this. Liberal internet kind of had a problem with this. Now, listen to Elon Musk talking about having children and engaging the audience with how many children do you have? How many do you have? Yeah, you should go out there and have children. Listen.
I think like something that is really important is like you just literally have to have kids or there's no next generation. I mean, Alex, do you have kids?
Yes, I do. I'm not as prolific as you, but I wish I was. They're the best thing in my life. I have 4.
Okay, great. And Andrew?
I do have a few. I won't let you down, Elon. I'm coming to take over your title. I'm coming to take over. I'm doing my best. You know, I've got to use my good looks for something.
Well, I think we ought to encourage people to have kids.
And this is the bottom line argument. This is what is so important. We just talked about how the globalists are ultimately selfish and only care about their own power.
Most of the globalists don't have children. And
of course, because they're selfish.
So goes on to say that, the earth can handle way more people. This whole argument that Al Gore makes that, we're overpopulated and all of this, Bill Gates, overpopulation, all of these things. No, the earth can handle tens of billions of more people on this planet. And that we have a massive problem right now and that we should have more children. So Clay Thompson tweeted this, said, pushing a message to have children and families. Watch the legacy media spin this one. Oh, and they did. Because the U.S. has a population problem right now. And, the Biden administration has an open border policy. The great replacement of Americans is happening right before our eyes. The mainstream media, though, is also pushing this narrative that it's good to be childless. Here's the Associated Press. Gen Z millennials are speaking out on the reluctance to become parents. And you can dive deeply into all of their reasons why they just don't want to become parents. They think that, we want to be better. We want to be better stewards of the earth. In fact, highlighted in this Associated Press piece is other women interviewed also cited climate change as one of the reasons why they don't want to have children. Climate change, along with overwhelming student debt coupled with inflation, as reasons they'll never be parents. Some younger men, too, are opting out, and more are seeking vasectomies. Imagine young men getting vasectomies. Interesting to watch how some countries are addressing their declining birth rate and some countries do not. CNN suggesting that Americans should adopt a new word for childlessness. It's called R-productive, A-R-E, like we are productive. Instead of we're childless, no, we're just productive. We are productive. So that's the phrase that CNN is pushing, this catchy phrase comes from the very same person, by the way, that coined the term sober curious. Like, I'm just sober curious. I'm not actually sober. I'm just sober curious. So are productive. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Sober curious? Like, is that I'm drunk or I'm not drunk? I'm curious. Like, I don't know what that is bizarre.
It gets you off the hook. Like, oh, if you have drinks here, it's like you're kind of toying with the idea of it. As the CNN headline places it here. Why I'm hoping motherhood spectrum will be the new sober curious. Oh yeah. The motherhood spectrum. The R productive. The reason why is, according to CNN, the reason why many women cite for not wanting kids are, rapidly spiraling climate problems. Where are they living that like the climate is causing them to not want to have babies? What are they? Where? I don't know anyone.
Maybe.
I don't even know. I don't know. I mean, Antarctica,
it's too cold to get naked. I don't know.
I don't know. You think you'd be like, if you were in Antarctica, you'd probably be cozying up with like one of your workmates down there. There's only like 100 of you, and you meet the love of your life, and then we met in Antarctica. That's where we had babies. To me, that seems like a perfect place for it. I mean, it's crazy. So climate is causing all of this. It doesn't make any sense to me. And Gen Z and millennials say they are not choosing to have kids, and they just don't want to, quote, according to this Pew Research survey. I wonder where they're getting this, though. The idea, though, that this is selfish came up during that Twitter space, and Austin Bobbin says, not having children isn't selfish. It's reasonable pragmatism. Babies are for wealthy and poor. $200,000 is the average cost of raising one child to 18 years old in the United States. 18 years old. $200,000 is the average cost. Okay. So, yeah, there's definitely an economic piece to this, a massive economic piece to this. And here's an idea. How about instead of sending $200 billion off to Ukraine or other places, or a $1 trillion a year war budget, what if we use that to reinvest in families in the United States? Giving incentives for mortgages and things like that, being able to offset that. If you have children, if you have a family, here are these additional incentives for you to be getting a mortgage and a homeowner. In fact, they do that in Russia.
Yeah, because if you think about it, that means having one kid, and with the debt clock, you're $400,000 in debt.
Right. Yeah, let's go to the debt clock. Yeah, here's the U.S. national debt clock right now. Yeah, $33 trillion. So, yeah, because we're spending so much money on war and sending it around the world. What if we reinvested in the United States? Imagine that, if we reinvested in the United States. Well, TikTok is bad. We know that. We already know how it's pushing content that is harming children, pushing Malthusian trans agenda. Well, now reports are that TikTok's algorithm is actively pushing content that is anti-family, no children, talking you out of having children. There's a new trend that's being promoted in their algorithm, promoted by TikTok. It's called Dinks. Have you guys heard of Dinks?
Nope.
No, I have not
yet.
Dual income, no kids. Dual income, no kids. Now, these have been trending over the past couple of weeks. This is the new trend. So if you're a dink, you're a dual income, no kids, you're creating videos like this, and you're sharing like all of the amazing things that you get to do in your life and your day with having no children. You soulless, like you're promoting the idea of this, by the way. Okay, so here's dink number one. Take a look at dink number one.
We're dinks. We go to Trader Joe's and workout classes on the weekends.
We're dinks. We get into snobby hobbies like skiing and golfing.
We're dinks. We can go to Florida on a whim.
We're dinks. We're already planning our European vacation next year.
Dinks. We get a full 8 hours of sleep and sometimes more.
We're dinks. We get desserts and appetizers at restaurants.
We're dinks. We can play with other kids and give them back.
We're dinks. We still do it 3 times a week.
We're dinks. We spend our discretionary income on $8 lattes.
We're dinks. We max out our 401ks, Roth IRAs, and HSAs.
We're dinks. We don't use our kids or dog as an excuse to leave a party. We just leave.
Dinks. Dinks that max out their 401k.
That's just... I just hear the people from Spaceballs, the dink dink.
Dink
like
dink, dink dink dink. Yeah, that's what we called our kids. Like, when after they watched Spaceballs, like, and they would walk around the house getting ready for bed. Like, come on, dink dinks, let's get in bed. They're children. That's what they are. Also, the idea of maxing out your 401k. what a government laughable disaster the 401k plan is, by the way. That speaks to their level of financial education, by the way. You're maxing out a 401k plan where the government makes money and you don't know all the fees. So they're laughing behind your back because all the fees that they're charging you don't even know about. Anyway, so yeah, this term DINK has been around for a long time. This is a new term, but it's actively being promoted here. Here's another group of dinks that loves to spend their quality time going to Costco.
Why is nobody talking about being dinks? Well, I'm freshly married and I'm going to talk about it. Here's our life as dinks in our early 30s. No shocker here, folks. Today we went to Costco. We don't have kids to feed, but we got lots of money to spend on goodies. Brian always checks out while I get a box, and then I sit here and look cute. Here's the haul, and our total was $252. The register game at Costco never gets old. You cannot tell me that grocery shopping and a fresh slice of Costco pizza isn't a good date night. I mean, you can tell me that, but I don't believe it. Obviously, we had car cookies for dessert, and yeah, I will probably just make this a series now, so follow along for more dink content.
Follow along for more dink content. So they're having such a romantic, fun night at Costco that they're filming the entire sequence for people on the internet, by the way. Like, okay, it's a very intimate experience. They're filming the whole thing. Here's dink number 3. Here's another group of dinks who actively get 8 hours of sleep and have a great life.
We're dinks. We go on 10 vacations a year.
We're dinks. We spend our disposable income on fun stuff, like boats.
We're dinks. We spend 4 hours a day on our favorite hobbies.
We're dinks. We get 8 hours of sleep at night.
We're dinks. Sometimes we buy plane tickets for the same weekend.
We're dinks. We never have to pay for a babysitter.
We're dinks. Our house is almost always clean.
We're dinks. We have the most spoiled dogs in the world.
Yeah. It's exciting.
Can't afford a windsock, though, all that extra money.
Yeah. We have boats. We have a clean house, but we don't know how to film videos. We don't know how to deal with a windsock. Yeah. I think it's a fascinating trend. I think it's really interesting. And I think these individuals are going to find out come a few years from now, like what life really has to offer when you're.
I mean, really. What you're really promoting is the economy and how bad it is that like it used to be where you could survive on one income and still have that kind of lifestyle, even with kids or whatever, and have extra money and all that. But now you have to have a dual income family in order to even survive in America. And if you have a kid, they're just proving you can't survive because everything's so expensive that you have to like, it's that 3-job thing we talked about earlier with Bush. Like you cannot afford. And I think it's more that it's an affording thing. Not like a life, like, hey, this is a perfect lifestyle. We don't have kids. No, it's like some people are forced into that because they can't afford it.
That's at the heart of it. That's at the heart of it.
Yeah.
The financial piece of this is at the heart of all of this. And I think, and they're that's why you're seeing the liberal media like normalizing this. Like it's okay. It's totally fine to not have children. Don't even think about having children. It's totally fine. You can't afford it anyway. Just live the life that you want right now. Don't have children. Don't even plan to have children. And you can't afford it. It's $200,000. How are you going to be able to put these kids through any kind, pay for diapers, pay for food? You barely can pay your own rent right now. And that's the state of the Biden economy right now in the United States with inflation. I saw an interesting video a few weeks ago where a young girl was sitting on, she was in her probably mid-20s, maybe mid to late 20s. And I think it went viral where she's sitting at a lake house. Small lake house. I don't know where she was, like Pennsylvania or something. And it was a small, like little lake house with her, and it's her parents' house. And she's sitting on the backyard, on the back swing, looking out at this like pond lake. And she said, I grew up and my parents were able to buy this house on a teacher's salary. They both were teachers. And we had a great childhood and they were able to afford this house in this neighborhood. And we were always able to go out to the movies and, had a meal out, every so often and had a great childhood. Now me and my husband could never afford to live in the same exact house that I'm sitting in now where my parents live. Dual income, we could never afford to buy this same house today in 2023. That's the state of inflation. That's the state of the economy right now.
Maybe like walking like, hey, we're dinks. And we're one accidental pregnancy away from absolutely nothing.
Right. Total bankruptcy. Dink, 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 dink. But I think it's interesting. Elon Musk talking about everyone should have I love his statistics, right? 2.1 babies. Because that's what it's really going to take in the United States for us to stop this birth gap. Or the Biden administration's idea, I guess, is just completely open up the southern border and just let everyone in, so then it completely changes the population of the United States anyway. So you guys don't need to have babies. Don't even worry about it. Who cares? The Biden administration has just opened up the floodgates and allow as many people into the United States as possible. We've got more news to get to here on the show. We're going to talk about this child trafficking in the United States. That's happening, and the Biden administration knows about it. We're going to speak to an HHS whistleblower who told them about it. What do they do? We'll tell you about that. We'll get there in a second. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Moomoo, because right now they have a 5.1 cash interest account that they've just now set up. This is their cash sweep account. So that means that if you've got cash sitting in the bank right now, sitting in your account, God, I'm starting to get sweaty in here tonight. Turn the heat down. Take off my jacket, folks. I apologize. So if you have you open this account. Well, this is crazy, okay? You open up your new Moomoo account. You're going to get 15 free stocks if you go to redacted.inc/Moomoo when you open it up. But now when the cash is just sitting there and you haven't invested anything yet, or maybe you've sold some stocks and it's sitting there waiting to reinvest, you're going to get 5.1% interest, a 5.1% API in your account right now. And it's unbelievable. And, again, you think about your savings account that you have at your local bank, 0.01% interest. No, you're going to get 5.1%. So again, like in my account, my Moomoo account, I've got cash that I haven't invested in certain commodity stocks. It's sitting there. It's sitting there and it's making interest while I decide what stocks to invest in. I'm waiting for the Fed meeting this week. I want to hear what Jerome Powell has to say about rate cuts and about what's going to happen with rates. And then I'm probably going to buy and invest in certain real estate related stocks and other gold related stocks. But I'm waiting on that. But while that cash is sitting there, it's earning 5.1% interest. So they just rolled this out. Really great incentive for you to check it out. Go to redacted.inc/Moomoo, open your account, get 15 free stocks when you sign up and make your initial deposits, and then use it as a savings account in the cash sweep account. It's got over $1 million FDIC insurance. So if you can have up to $1 million that's FDIC insured in the account as well. Anyway, redacted.inc/Moomoo. Check it out today, redacted.inc/Moomoo. This is a segment you all need to pay attention to. Stop what you're doing. Please share this because it's happening under Americans' eyes right now, and your tax dollars are going to operate one of the largest child trafficking operations in the world. Child sex trafficking, child slavery in the United States is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the government is facilitating it. I know it might be hard to swallow, but we have multiple whistleblowers here on the show exposing this, and we have one today. Deborah White is a former HHS whistleblower who watched this all unfold and learned how this operation is happening to this day. And Deborah, we'd love to welcome you to Redacted. Thank you so much for your bravery and shining a light on this horrific story.
Thank you so much, Clayton. I appreciate you having me on and just providing a platform just to let the American people know exactly what's going on in the government. So thank you.
So absolutely. So this is happening right now. Before we get into your story, how bad is it? Americans are sitting there, going to their jobs, they're taking care of their families, putting food on the table. And I think most Americans can almost kind of compartmentalize this story. Like, this can't possibly be happening in the United States. Is it happening, and how bad is it?
Yeah, Clayton, I was one of those Americans. When I signed up to go and help Health and Human Services, Office of Refugee Resettlement Program under the Administration for Children and Families, I had no idea. I mean, sure, I'm not totally ignorant that, bad people exist and they exploit, systems, things like that. But I would have never in my wildest dreams imagined that when I signed up to go help reunite children with their families, what I would actually uncover at the site that I was at. It's bad. It's rampant. So from my perspective, almost every single case that I was dealing with was a case of trafficking at the site. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but that's because the cases that were coming to me were actually the trouble cases. So because it's, I guess to answer the question, it's really bad. It's really rampant. I was at one of maybe 15 sites that were operating in the summer of 2021 because of the influx of children that are coming across the border. And the reason there's such an influx is because, there's an entire trafficking network, that happens, in country. A majority of the kids that we were seeing were from Guatemala. And those children, the vast majority of them were being trafficked, labor trafficked into the country, other worse forms of trafficking as well, sex trafficking. But many of the cases that I came across were definitely labor trafficking. Children knew that they were coming to the United States to work, to pay back the debt that they owed to the cartel and, send money home. But this is the story that the traffickers paint for the picture they paint for these children, that they're going to have, this wonderful life and these opportunities that are just wonderful in the United States. And then when they come here, they don't realize they're actually slaves and they're actually forced to stay and work 7 days a week, at different locations. And so, again, to just try to recap the question, it's rampant. It's happening across multiple sites. We were in touch with sites, in Pecos, Texas, Fort Bliss, Texas. I was in Pomona, California. That was the site that I was assigned to for 4 months. And so as I queried the system, and the government system of record, which is the UAC portal, I found that, in a particular case, that we found, the first case I found on the site, which was 2 children that were going to Bonita Springs, Florida, that the actual household member had about 16 other children. So I brought it to the attention of the administration there on site, and, they acted like
16 other children. Yes. I mean, an absolute red flag. These are not his children.
Not his children. So once they figured out that I figured this out, they said, "Hey, well, how did you do this? How did you locate this?" I mean, the leadership there acted like they were extremely shocked, as if they'd never seen trafficking through their program, And so I showed them. I said, "Here's how I queried the system. Here's how I figured out this household member is actually attached to these, 6 different properties that have multiple children at each of these sites." And I noticed that some of the children that had aged out, maybe he had recruited those children, 2, 3, 4 years ago, those now adults were recruiting children as well. So now they were now sponsors. And so it's like a network. So once these kids age out, they start then recruiting children from Guatemala and keeping them under their care.
So for the ignorant, myself included, on how this process works, this individual who has 16 children and now these kids who become adults and they start networking these children. I mean, they're brainwashed, right? So they're part of this process. They're sort of brainwashed and it's almost like Stockholm syndrome. And they're recruiting children then coming up from Guatemala. They're pretending to be relatives, right? They're pretending to be an uncle, a grandfather, etc. And they're funneling these children into the United States through a systemic program. And the United States is involved in this program. I mean, they're not just sitting back sort of facilitating, just watching this happen. They're actively involved in this sort of Guatemala, Honduras process right into the United States, correct?
Yeah, I mean, they're providing the door. The door's wide open. These kids know, the traffickers know, and then the kids then know, the process is, hey, we'll get you up to the border. You just run over there and, Border Patrol is going to have to let you in. And then the government will take it from there and they'll make sure that you get to that address that we gave you. And so they provide. So
they're the transportation. They're even giving them airline flights. In fact, this morning, as you and I are speaking, it's been reported, according to multiple sources, that the TSA has created separate lines at the airport so that Americans when we go to the airport, we have to show ID to get on a plane, right? We even have to take off our shoes, for crying out loud. We have to take laptops out of our bags. The TSA has now created a separate line at the airport for illegal immigrants where they don't have to show identification. And they're being ferried across the United States, government funded by the Biden administration, and transported to houses. They don't have to show identification. Plus, they're giving them multiple thousands of dollars per month in a stipend in order to live.
Yes.
And this is happening.
This is happening. And unfortunately, the IDs of the sponsors, we don't even know that they're valid. And you know why? We never actually see the sponsor face to face. We have the ability, we can do video calls. All of the case managers have phones that have the ability to do video call. As a matter of fact, the entire process is done through WhatsApp. So the sponsor sends identification, quote unquote identification that's theirs. But again, you never know because you've never seen their face. The same sponsor could be sending you identification for 15 different people and you would never know it. You would never know that it's the same person because again, they're doing it at different sites. They know the process. They do it at different sites, different case managers, requesting kids from across the country. It's not just one place. And the government ID that they're giving you is typically a Guatemalan or Honduran issued ID. And it can be expired up to 2 years. The instructions that we received were to accept any ID given to you, even expired 2 years. And these are not US IDs. These are IDs from in-country, and a lot of them were expired. And in some cases, they were giving us copies of an ID. Like it wasn't even the actual ID. You would have to accept a copy of the ID.
What did they say? What did HHS say when you alerted them to the child trafficking that was funneling right through your office?
Yeah. So, initially the leadership there said, oh, we're shocked. Oh my gosh, what's going on? They acted like they'd never seen it, like they'd never seen trafficking through their program. And we know that they've been doing this for years and years. We know that there have been congressional hearings in 2015 and 2018 that have, called out HHS or our program, Office of Refugee Resettlement Program, to say, what's going on? We know that you're trafficking, in 2015 or 2015, I believe, they found kids, in Marion, Ohio, that were living on egg farms. So they absolutely know that trafficking goes on through their program, but there's no training whatsoever to tell you how to.
And where are these?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, right. So there's nothing there to red flag this and to run it up. There's no protocols in place, and there's no sort of follow up. You received a letter saying, "Hey, thanks for alerting us," and that's it. Right. And it's continued, and it's gotten worse since then, right?
It has, because when trafficking was identified, at least that first case, and cases afterwards, because we had multiple dozens. Once it was identified, the child was then, transferred to another facility. This particular boy, Antonio, that I remember. I pray for him at night. He went to another facility, but then they eventually released him. So what happens is they act like they're saving the kid, like they're sending them to a different facility that they say that can handle, more long-term care. But then when you call to find out, what's going on with that kid, you find out that he was released anyways. So he was sent to the location that he wasn't supposed to go to. And then once the administration there found out that we were making phone calls and, checking up on the child that had been transferred to another facility, they then told us, they said, we appreciate that you care about the children, but you are not to make phone calls to any other facilities to try to find out what's going on. You just need to process the children that are your cases in front of you, and you need to stop worrying about that. And the other thing is, when we knew there were fraudulent birth certificates, we would call the consulate to try to figure out, hey, is this a valid birth certificate or not? We got scolded by the leadership administration. They came in and said, that is not your job. They said, you are not here to investigate the sponsor. You are here to reunite the children with their sponsor, and that is your job. You are not to investigate the sponsor. They said that's our responsibility, and we will notify the consulate if we believe that there's fraudulent birth certificates being passed through the site.
Do you know of any incidents where someone has flagged a fraudulent birth certificate and someone was prosecuted and or arrested?
No, not at all.
So they're doing a great job.
Right.
So you're looking into it. You're noticing that this is fraudulent. Yes. You're calling up to find out the welfare and safety of these children, and you're scolded.
Yes.
Don't ask questions.
No.
Your job is done.
That's right. That's right. The goal there was us to process the children within 10 to 14 days. And if we couldn't get it done in 10 to 14 days, then they would take the case from us and they would give it to a person that was on the strike team. The strike team, those would typically happen on Saturdays and Sundays when the case managers may not be on site. And then they would process the children. So this strike team member would then make sure that they got the child out of there within 24 to 48 hours because we were taking too long with the cases.
So these children, they're in the United States. They're working at egg farms and chicken farms and strawberry farms, and it seems like this labor is in incredible demand. That's why it's such a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry. It seems like the Biden administration wants to keep these borders open and flowing because this labor is so incredibly important to these companies and these businesses. They're all friends of the Biden administration. They're big donors to the Democratic Party, et cetera. and frankly to the Republican Party. That's why under multiple administrations, nothing seems to happen here, that these borders are wide open and these children are being put into slavery positions in the United States so that cheap labor can flourish. Am I wrong?
That's absolutely correct. It's modern day slavery. These children are enslaved and they're in factories. There's one case in Virginia, I think it was a Tyson, I don't want to say the wrong company, but it was a chicken farm. And the child had his arm severed off, from the shoulder down, severed off in a machine. Thankfully, he was medevaced, and they asked, how old is this worker, and everyone was really, shocked. I think this was the New York Times that did a piece on this. And, they had to say, hey, he was 15 or 16 years old. And, but nothing happens. I mean, the plants continue to operate with children. It's just a travesty, right. But there is a demand, and that's why it keeps happening. And that's why they don't shut the border down, because if you shut down the border, there's no more border problem, but they won't. They continue to allow it to happen, even though they know that there's modern day slavery happening, right through America.
Well, sources have told me that, ICE, they know when ICE is going to show up on a particular day at a chicken farm in Atlanta or Georgia or somewhere else. And individuals are rounded up and then they look the other way, and then new individuals arrive the very next day. That this is part of the process. It's sort of the look over the shoulder. This is part of the process. So until we get some major change in government throwing out these deep state creeps who are allowing this to flourish, this is not going to change
100%.
Because
absolutely,
really, really troubling. Well, I could talk more deeply about this, but I just wanted to give sort of an overview for our audience, and we can dive more deeply at a later date, Deborah. But
sure.
Thank you for your bravery, bringing this to the attention of the American people. What can people do? People who are watching right now who have compartmentalized this type of story and are moving on with their lives, what can American people do? You're out there trying to draw attention to this. What can we do to stop this?
Yeah, that's a great question, Clayton. And it's one that we've been working on as a team. There's 5 of us whistleblowers that work together, that have seen it from different perspectives. We have one DHS whistleblower who has seen, gang members, MS-13, requesting children. We have one whistleblower, that we know worked the transportation side of it, who has witnessed children, babies in Texas at a Walmart, like thousands of babies under a year old at facilities. And so the magnitude of this travesty, I mean, I cannot even describe how horrendous it is, and how horrendous it is for the children that have to live it, because they don't realize what they're getting into. They don't realize they're coming here to be slaves. They do not know that. And I mean, it's just abhorrent what's happening. But the American people, can say, hey, we know about these whistleblowers who have come forward. You can mention us by name. Many congressional staffers, know us. We're working with congressional staffers now. Senator Grassley's office is doing an amazing job of addressing, this issue. Just recently, I think it was this past Monday, the Washington Examiner dropped a piece about Senator Grassley's office actually sending a memo out to Health and Human Services, Office of Refugee Resettlement, and with 38 other senators, so 39 senators in total, sent this letter stating that, HHS cannot do a rule change that they're trying to do right now that would make it easier to traffic the children by not requesting, certain identification processes, paperwork, by making sure that HHS employees cannot report outside of Health and Human Services without their express permission. And so Senator Grassley's office has sent a memo to ensure that that rule change that was in the Federal Register cannot be made into law, because what HHS ORR program was trying to do is bypass, the congressional process and do an administrative change through the Federal Register. And so we did a campaign and got about 66,000 signatures from the American people to ensure that this rule change would not go into effect. So contact your senator's office, mention us by name, Deborah White, Tara Rodas, Carlos Arellano, and Aaron Stevenson, and Myra Moreno. That's the 5 of us who are, doing podcasts, a couple nights a week, just trying to get the word out. So please contact your senators and let them know that, you won't stand for this, and you will not stand by and just have your taxpayer dollars go towards government-sponsored trafficking.
Yeah, please share this interview. Take this YouTube clip, this Rumble clip, and just share it with your member of Congress. and tell them to watch this right now. So, Deborah, we thank you for your bravery in this. We thank you for everything you're doing to get the word out about this and all the work and messaging. I know it's an uphill battle, especially when you've got big tech censorship that's really suppressing this story as much as they can. They don't like it. We saw that with the movie The Sound of Freedom. We saw the suppression about this story. They make a lot of money off of child trafficking, and they do not want us exposing it. Deborah, thank you for your work on this.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless you all.
And thanks so much, Deborah, and thanks so much for your bravery. And, thanks to all of you for being a part of this community and giving voice to these whistleblowers, sharing this story out with loved ones, posting it on social media, emailing it to a friend. If you know someone who works in the government, who works at HHS, or please share these segments out with people, because that's how we can make a change. We can stop this madness at the U.S. border and what's happening to these children coming into the United States and these people preying on these children. So thanks to all of you guys for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. And thanks for all of the well wishes on our son. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys for that. I should mention we have our Plus Club, our Redacted Plus Club. If you would like to join our Plus Club, you can do that. Again, this show is totally free, but if you'd like to support independent journalism and come over and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can join our private community where we have our book club, our private book club, as well as access to exclusive content and videos that no one else will get to see, and some that you will get to see before anyone else does. So exclusive content over there, like our redacted conversations and other things. But it's a way for you to support what we do here. If you care to, it's totally up to you. Again, you can come over to redacted.inc and join our Redacted Plus community. We really, really appreciate it. We'll be back here tomorrow night. Very, very exciting. We've got a very special guest on the show live with us tomorrow night. You don't want to miss that. I'm telling you, you do not want to miss that. And Natalie will be back tomorrow as well. Hopefully our son is feeling better, so she will be here as well. So that's tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Much love to all of you guys. Have a great night, everyone. Bye.